Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a truly revolutionary shift in how we think about artificial intelligence in medicine. We're going to be looking at a framework called VibeRounds and its underlying architecture, the Clinical Cognition Operating System, or CCOS for short. For a long time now, the whole narrative has kind of been that AI is this diagnostic oracle, right? Like an answer engine you just feed data into to get a result. Well, today's source material flips that entirely on its head. We are going to explore how AI can act instead as a cognitive assistant, so a system designed not to think for the clinician, but to fundamentally upgrade how the clinician thinks for themselves.
Right off the bat, I want you to consider this quote. VibeRounds is not AI that answers, it is AI that questions. It's such a powerful paradigm shift because it completely overturns what we've come to expect from standard medical AI. Instead of just handing over a neat, finalized diagnosis, this system actually adopts a Socratic posture. It's actively designed to challenge assumptions, surface biases, and honestly, force the user to articulate their reasoning. And that Socratic tone, that is the foundation for everything we're going to cover today.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for the explainer. 1. AI that questions, not answers. 2. An MRI for clinical thinking. 3. The 6 architectural layers. 4. Modules for clinical cognition. And 5. Building the cognitive pipeline.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, AI that questions, not answers.
You know, as AI systems get more advanced and highly accurate at diagnosing, you have to ask, are we inadvertently designing tools that make doctors cognitively lazy? If an AI just hands you the answer, your critical thinking muscles are inevitably going to atrophy. And that is exactly the danger this framework aims to prevent. Just look at the stark contrast here on the slide. Conventional AI is entirely about generating conclusions, right? Its whole goal is just to improve its own responses. But the Clinical Cognition Operating System, its goal is to improve human reasoning. The clinician is the one doing the heavy lifting, and the AI merely provides the cognitive scaffolding to help them along. It is a complete inversion of the traditional model.
To actually enforce this, the system relies on a really strict set of built-in constraints. Honestly, think of it kind of like a tough old-school attending physician on the ward. First off, there's forced commitment. The AI literally refuses to unlock a hint until the learner commits to an initial answer. If a learner just types something like, "I don't know," the system hits them with a minimum effort threshold and redirects them to try again. There's also this deliberate 10-second delayed rescue, so the AI doesn't just immediately fill the awkward silence. And when it finally does help, it uses tiered hits, starting really broad and only narrowing down if the learner continues to struggle. But crucially, the assistance is effort-weighted, meaning the deeper the learner thinks, the more tailored the teaching becomes in return.
Moving right along to Section 2, an MRI for clinical thinking.
This brings us to a really fascinating way to visualize invisible cognitive processes, something called guided discovery. The creator brilliantly describes this as an MRI for clinical thinking, and I love that analogy. Just like a physical MRI takes the invisible anatomy of the human body and makes it visible on a screen, guided discovery does the exact same thing for the anatomy of a clinician's thought process. Normally, you only get to see a doctor's final decision, but this platform reveals the hidden reasoning structures, the unstated assumptions, and the cognitive pathways operating right beneath the surface as they navigate from total uncertainty to a final diagnosis.
To understand exactly where this fits into medical education, let's look at this pedagogical spectrum. We start over at Stage 1 with passive lecture, and we move all the way across to independent research at Stage 5. Now, VibeRounds is purpose-built to operate precisely in the middle, right in the Socratic and guided discovery stages. This is the exact zone where learning transitions from simply passively absorbing facts to actively constructing mental models and stress-testing logic. It's where those critical thinking muscles are actually built.
Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds. The 6 architectural layers.
So, we understand the philosophy, but how does this actually function under the hood? Well, it breaks down into an anatomy of 6 sequential layers. It starts at layer 1 with surface-level clinical reasoning, so things like building differential diagnoses and utilizing Bayesian inference. Then layer 2 coordinates the workflow and sequences the modules. Next, at layer 3, we hit the metacognitive layer, which acts as a real-time auditor detecting cognitive biases. Layer 4 manages epistemic trust. Layer 5 maps out the decision architecture across a whole spectrum of risk. And finally, Layer 6 closes the loop by turning the entire session into a longitudinal learning archive. It's an incredibly structured journey from raw data all the way to durable clinical wisdom.
So the crucial point I really want to emphasize is centered right on layer 4, the epistemic trust layer. It's so vital to understand that this layer is not just some automated external fact-checker scouring the internet. Instead, it relies entirely on prompt-level instructions that shape exactly how the AI frames its own uncertainty. It's all about calibrating the AI's confidence, ensuring the human user doesn't fall into the dangerous trap of over-trusting the machine.
The epistemic safeguards at this layer are absolutely brilliant. For example, you have hallucination calibration, which actively suppresses false numerical precision. So instead of the AI confidently but falsely claiming a very specific 13.7% mortality rate, it will smartly state that mortality appears moderate. Then there's prioritized claim verification. This ensures the AI only demands verification for safety-critical diagnosis-changing claims rather than overwhelming the user by forcing them to check every single little detail. It also replaces single correct answers with a full spectrum of defensible clinical pathways, and it calibrates confidence across multiple domains like diagnosis, evidence, and prognosis. Ultimately, this ensures the clinician remains firmly in the driver's seat.
Let's shift gears a bit. Section 4. Modules for clinical cognition. Now that we've covered the structural anatomy, let's look at the physiology, the actual practical tools. 57. No way around it, that is a big number. That is the total number of distinct, self-contained reasoning modules currently available in the Clinical Cognition OS library. And each of these modules acts as a highly specialized prompt workflow, giving you a completely different cognitive lens through which to view a patient case. Let's look at 3 quick examples to see just how varied they really are.
First up, we have Module 15, Illness Script Acquisition. This module specifically hones a clinician's pattern recognition. You know when a doctor sees a set of symptoms and instantly jumps to a classic textbook diagnosis, an illness script? Well, this module forces them to pause. It tests whether the patient's actual presentation truly fits that classic pattern or if it only partially matches. It's a fantastic way to prevent premature anchoring.
Then there is Module 26, which is bias auditing. This is where that metacognitive layer we talked about really shines. You can run an entire case discussion through this module, and it literally acts as a mirror. It traces your reasoning backward to catch cognitive shortcuts, things like availability bias or premature closure, that you probably didn't even realize you were taking. And finishing up our rapid-fire examples, we have Module 56, Hypothetico-Deductive Reasoning. This module enforces the rigorous classic scientific method right in clinical practice. It forces the user to explicitly generate a hypothesis, outline exactly what data would test that hypothesis, and then refine their stance based on the findings. It's highly structured, disciplined clinical thinking, available totally on demand. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Building the Cognitive Pipeline. So you've got these 57 modules, but how do you actually use them in the real world? Well, you use the CCOS Builder to chain them together into a customized cognitive pipeline. And this brilliantly illustrates just how simple the workflow is. You basically just paste in your clinical case, check the boxes for the modules you want in sequence, and by the way, the order matters immensely here. Running a bias check before a diagnostic deep dive yields a very different result than doing it in reverse. Then you click Copy Pipeline, and you literally just paste that single, massive prompt into your preferred LLM, whether that's Claude or ChatGPT, and you let the system guide you. To really see the power of this sequencing, let's look at a dummy case directly from the sources. Picture a 58-year-old man presenting with chest tightness and a history of diabetes. Now, if you select a learner-facing pipeline, the AI acts just like that Socratic attending we talked about. It interrogates the learner step by step, demanding they commit to a diagnosis like acute coronary syndrome before it offers a single hint about troponin trends. But if you take that exact same case and run it through an educator-facing pipeline, let's say chaining a safety module, a reasoning module, and an evidence module, the output is completely different. It instantly generates a highly structured teaching note, highlighting exactly where students commonly anchor incorrectly and grounding the ideal answer in primary literature. It's the exact same case, but an entirely different utility, all based on the pipeline you built. So as you can see, VibeRounds and the CCOS framework are completely transforming AI from a basic answer engine into a powerful cognitive mirror. By forcing commitment, layering on these epistemic safeguards, and allowing us to chain these highly specialized reasoning modules, we legitimately now have a true MRI for clinical thinking. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. If AI can now successfully map the invisible pathways of how we think, what will it reveal about how you practice? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning.